thank you so much for jumping on board, man. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And for everyone who's either listening or watching, I'm interviewing Matt Buck, who is the founder of Running Adventures, which is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, guided ultra trail tour and ultra marathon coaching company. Is that right? Have I got the definition down?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain what it is
Oh,
exactly?
please do.
So Running Adventures does a number of things. So guided trail runs of all distances, trail weekends, coaching, both online and face to face, talks, consultations, and I could go on with other smaller things, but that's the main part.
The general gist.
The general gist of it, yeah.
No, that's cool. It's cool. So for everyone who doesn't know, and obviously I didn't know until a few days ago, what exactly is an ultra trail?
So an ultra distance, I guess, race or run is officially it's anything over a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
However, purists will kind of say 50k upwards, so 32 miles, 33 miles. But yeah, officially it's anything over a marathon distance, so anything over 26.2.
Okay, so officially that is the case. So why would purists say it's anything above 50k? Is that just a benchmark that they set themselves?
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. People would I guess people would do like a 27-mile run, which officially is an ultra, but some people would kind of turn their nose up at that and say that's not good enough or something.
Yeah, so there's not.
I'm not one of those people.
I get you. So there's not a big enough chasm between the 26 mile and the 33 to actually consider it being an ultra.
I don't really know what those guys would consider that kind of middle distance to be, but yeah, officially anything over a marathon. Let's just go with that.
No, that's fine. Officially anything over a marathon, and obviously there are some absolutely ridiculous ultra marathons out there that I've seen so far, and I know that you competed in the Marathon des Sables.
The Sable, yeah, that's it. In Sahara Desert.
That's right, yeah, in the Sahara Desert in Morocco, right?
That's it.
Wonderful, and that is 250 miles from what I read.
250k, I think, off the top of my head.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a long way. Yeah, in the desert, and you carry all your kit and food and everything that you need for the week. It's a week-long race. You carry it all on your back. So imagine all the food that you eat in a week, all on your back, traipsing through the desert, camping out at night, 50-degree heat. It's got it all. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty brutal. And in terms of the food that you're carrying with you, you said it's like the normal food you eat throughout a week, but is there anything specified in terms of diet?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean that's probably a bit misleading me saying that because it's all a lot of what you would eat is dehydrated food. So you get these packets of food which you just add water. So I mean they've got all sorts of weird and wonderful things, but the better ones are kind of like pastas, and you'll get like spaghetti bolognese and stuff like that. So you take a little stove, heat up some water, and then whack it in the food. Wait a few minutes for it to rehydrate, and then that's your dinner for the night. They taste okay. They're not as bad as they used to be. It's kind of what the army use. They used to be pretty bad, but these days they're not too bad. Not too bad.
Well, that's it. I mean, if they can make a protein shake that tastes like strawberry fudge cake, or whatever it might be, then they can make freeze-dried food taste okay now. So that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's kind of normal stuff you're carrying around with you now. For what I've seen so far, you can carry a variety of equipment that's very, very ultra running specific. For instance, you've got
Yeah.
like your mountain vests, your toe socks, which are essentially like gloves for feet. Um,
Yeah.
but I understand they're quite effective in terms of preventing blistering. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I could talk for hours about just kit alone, but so there's all sorts of different things you can get, but yeah, yeah, you can get all different types of socks, including the toe socks that you spoke about. You know, there's a gazillion different types of shoe that you can wear. Um, the vest that you said, the kind of bag that we carry. Um, there's all different versions of that as well. So, I mean, you can spend hours and hours deciding what to wear, what to take to an event, and that's kind of is partly what I do as a coach. Is it's not just writing training plans for people; it's giving them the advice on all this stuff as well. So it can be a bit of a minefield sometimes. So it's advising people on the best sort of kit to take, right down from the socks to the bag to the bottles. I could go on all day, right down to kind of what you're going to have in your medical kit and stuff like
Bloody hell! Yeah, it's quite impressive.
that.
It's quite impressive, and obviously there's something else that I came across. There was the bladders, the water bladders, which are
Yes.
essentially plastic. Like what was it? Incredibly like fortified plastic, but also very flexible. Looks like a bladder
Hmm.
essentially, but I imagine it's made specifically so it can fit around your body, can carry water, and that's all. It's almost like a little camel hump.
Yeah, yeah, we have. There's different, again, there's lots of different options, but you can get a bladder which goes on your back, which will be maybe 2 liters or something. Or another option is what I generally go for is to have what we call soft flasks,
Mhm.
which you'll see in photos. They're kind of on your front. And I would have two soft flasks on my front. Someone calling me, typical. Two soft flasks on my front, and that would be my hydration for a run or for a race.
And that's it. And how much are these? What's the capacity of these soft flasks?
So there's 500 milliliters in each, and then I might stick one in the back to for a bit of extra. But then we also, depending on what the race is and where the race is, quite often I've done races where we'll fill up out streams and things as we go, or we have filters that we sometimes carry with
Yeah.
us if you're in a mountain race, for example, so that you can filter the water and have safe drinking water there in that way as well. So um, there's lots of different options. Some races will have aid stations where they'll give you drinks and things, or if we're just out on a run with mates or something, if there's shops and things, then fine. But yeah, the extreme option is to get it out of a stream or a river or something and filter the water.
All right. I then just lost you for a couple of seconds there. I think the internet just lagged a tiny
Oh,
bit, so you kind of sounded like R2D2 for a second.
oh, really? That's
Yeah,
quite cool.
yeah,
Do
it's a little bit.
you want me to repeat that?
I think where I got to is that at the aid centres or the aid base or the life bases, what guys call them,
Yeah,
that
aid
the
stations.
aid stations. Yeah, what happens when you got there and then R2D2 came along?
R2D2 game. So yeah, and then quite often that there'll be water and drinks and things. But what I was saying is maybe if you're not in a race situation, you might wanna or you might need to, if you're in the mountains, for example, get your water out of a stream or a river, and that's when we use these filters
Right,
to make sure that the water's safe to drink, and there's not in case there's like a dead sheep up the stream or something.
which is plausible. It's plausible.
Which is, and yeah, yeah, it's possible,
I was
and I've seen it.
I was looking into there are these filters that you can get, and they're like filter straws, so you can drink directly out of rivers as well. I mean, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's is that something that you'd consider an essential life saving piece of equipment. Or you guys are happy just getting the filters? Because essentially you can just fill up your water bottles and take them with you, can't you?
Yeah, I've actually got a new filter which I've not used yet, which fits on the top of my bottle and it works in exactly the same way. So you fill your water up at the stream, put the kind of top on your bottle, and then you just drink as normal, but it will run the water all through a filter. So it works in exactly the same
Yeah,
way.
it just kind of makes more sense. I mean, I imagine like a little filter straw isn't going to take up too much space on your mountain vest or whatever else,
No.
but in essence, it seems superfluous when you've got that. And you mentioned obviously you've been filling up in mountains and things like that. Where else have you been? Like what's the most beautiful location that you've done an ultra marathon or a guided tour or something? I mean, you must have been. I mean, I've seen like the list is endless, but in your opinion, what's
Yeah.
the most beautiful that you've seen so far?
I mean, the Alps are fantastic. Huge mountains all around you, and you're kind of working your way up over these passes and things. Um, where else? I've got a soft spot for Wales, which is obviously nice and easy to get to.
Sure.
I mean, so many beautiful places. I've run in deserts and jungles and um, a lot of really inhospitable areas of the world. Um, yeah, it's hard to say a favorite because I like different places for different reasons. I mean, the deserts are beautiful, but they're brutal with the temperatures, obviously. The mountains are just stunning, but it's bloody hard work getting up over them, and quite intense running. And then the jungles are brilliant as well, but there's lots of things trying to eat you all the time. So everywhere's got their advantages and
Or
disadvantages.
their specific charms as well. And
Yeah, exactly.
in light of that, have you ever been in any kind of adverse altercation with a wild beast of sorts?
Yeah. I've actually got a whole page of altercations in my notebook over here, for a podcast that I'm planning to do soon. But yeah, I mean, I've had a cobra rear up in front of me before. I've seen loads of snakes out and about. Um, what do we have in Sri Lanka? Crocodiles and things. We've had, um, but the worst thing is what dogs, guard dogs. In places like I've done a lot of running in Portugal, and if you go inland in Portugal, away from all the tourist areas, you've got stunning trails, um, but you go past a lot of farms, and they have guard dogs, which are like the scariest things in the
Yeah,
world.
they're going to hunt you down,
And
mate.
yeah, basically they're there to get rid of you. So, and I'm not great with dogs as it is. So, to be honest, I'd take a snake over a dog any day of the week. Um, yeah, they're pretty scary, and they get you moving.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. It's the same out in. I think wild dogs are particularly bad as well, especially the strays that live
Yeah,
in like either India or East Asian countries, because they just start chasing for no reason. If you're on even if you're on a moped or something like that, like in Cambodia or Vietnam, then you better ride fast because they're going to catch you, man. I mean, it's
yeah,
not worth the risk. So what did you?
and they don't give
Oh, they
up.
don't give up. I mean, they're relentless, mate. I mean, you got to move fast. And with regards to the snake altercation, the king cobra, how
Mm.
did you deal with that?
So that was in Cambodia
No
actually.
way. Whereabouts?
In Angkor Wat. You know the?
Yeah, in
Have you
Siem
been to
Reap.
Angkor
Yeah,
Wat?
I didn't actually go up to Siem Reap,
Yeah,
but yeah, obviously there's a shit ton of snakes in Cambodia.
yeah. So me and we'd done a trek. I used to kind of lead treks, which is a whole nother story. But we had a day off, and so me and a couple of the group went for a bit of running around Angkor Wat. And if like you've got the main Angkor Wat temple, but then there's this whole massive area of smaller temples, which no one bothers to go to because it means walking for 20 minutes or whatever, and people are lazy generally. So we went out to these amazing temples all around. and it was stunning 'cause there was no one there. Whereas at Angkor Wat, there's hundreds, probably thousands of people. But anyway, we were running down a trail from one of these temples, and I was at the front. There's only three of us, but I was at the front, and yeah, I just saw it kind of at the last minute, and I kind of slammed the brakes on, and it reared up, and I kind of put my arms out to stop the other two from coming past, and we just edged backwards slowly, but probably quite quickly. Um, tried to be calm, and thankfully it just kind of slithered off into the bushes. But it definitely got the adrenaline going.
Yeah, mate, no doubt. And I suppose usually as soon as it rears up, that you do not want to be moving any further forwards. I mean, my knowledge of
No
the
way.
knowledge of king cobras is only as much as Steve Irwin ever told me, like whilst he was still alive. But even that, it's enough to get you on a 180 and out of there, man. That must have been pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it was. But I don't know. Sometimes with these situations that they're not actually scary
Mm.
when it's happening. It's the kind of afterwards when you go through the what if scenario, because it all happens so quickly that you don't have time to be scared really.
Yeah,
Um,
to fully.
but no, I'm not trying to make out I'm some sort of tough guy or something. I
No, I know
probably was still shitting myself.
that. No, I know exactly what you mean though, because it's the instant reaction at the end of the day. It's the adrenaline rush, as you said. It's fight or flight, and you don't have time to
That's it.
consider your options. Oh, what happens actually? Let me meditate on this fact for a second. If I sit down and just play with it, let's see if he actually bites me.
Yeah.
You're not going to really think about that.
Yeah.
But then
You just do what you got
you
to
do
do.
what you got to do. I mean, there's no thought of congealed blood going
Yeah.
through your head or anything, is there?
No.
No, terrifying stuff. Anyway, but cool. That's pretty awesome, though. That's a pretty awesome story, and over in Cambodia as well. So I wanted to get into your kind of routine and your diet for running. My diet personally is I'm quite endomorphic, so I can pack on the pounds. I think I was telling you just in our chat before we started. So I can happily if I end up eating carbs 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, I'll come out at the end of this this lockdown looking like a potato. So I cut those out of my diet altogether, and I also intermittent fast as well. So generally, I'd stick to a 16-8 as much as I can. But with that in mind, being an ultra runner, what kind of is that? Could that diet be transposed over to ultra running, or would it need to be altered in some way?
So I mean, there's ultra runners all around the world who, but amongst everyone, we've got every diet you can ever imagine covered, and people will argue, all day long, where vegan diet, whatever it might be, that is the way to go, and different things work for different people. For me personally, I just eat what I want to eat, and one of the is kind of a bit of a kind of in joke of ultra runners is part of the reason we do it is so we can stuff our faces with chocolate and pizza all day long, and drink beer. So it's
Sorry to interrupt you there, pal. Your internet temporarily went a little laggy again.
okay.
I got to inside joke and then R2D2.
And R2T2. So it's an inside joke amongst the ultra community that most of us do this just so we can eat whatever we want. So it means we can eat all the chocolate and pizza and beer in the world because we're running 20, 30 miles quite happily, and we'll go to the pub afterwards and have a load of beer and a load of fried chicken or whatever it might be. So personally, my diet is very traditional. I like the English diet of kind of meat and 2 veg or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't do anything special. But as we were kind of chatting about before we came on air, you've got to be careful in a time like this where personally where I'm not running quite as much as I normally do, because I'm still eating as much as I normally do. So I've got to be careful as well. So, but yeah, the diet that I do is nothing special
Okay.
because
And so even if you're training for marathon or anything like that, you don't alter your diet on the run up. Nothing. It's just
no,
wow.
I no, I just consistent with it all year round. Um, the only difference is if I've got a massive race coming up, I'll use it as an excuse to have that extra chocolate bar or something.
Hey, you live in a great world over there. And yeah, one of the things I was reading up on is that yeah, generally if you know have like healthy fats and micronutrients and all of that, it's supposed to prevent injury. But you guys literally don't do anything specific to kind of curtail the potential for injury.
Again, some people do,
Mm,
and like I would advise like clients to, take on some protein after a run and things like
yeah.
that to help with their recovery and to avoid injuries. But um, at the end of the day, if you train sensibly and don't overdo things and don't be stupid, then the chances of injury are pretty low. Um, not impossible, of course, um, but if you do things in the right way, then you shouldn't really hurt yourself. So, um, touch wood, like everyone, I'll get the odd little niggle here and there, but um, very rarely do I get anything which will stop me running. So, um, and that's not through any special diet or anything like that. So, I think that the training is more important than what you eat.
Okay. And you mentioned don't overdo it. Now you guys are running 100 miles plus. Like what would the
Yeah,
definition of
yeah,
overdo it be exactly?
yeah. Yeah, that's probably a bit of a silly thing to say. It depends on the individual. So, I'm more talking about in training rather than in an actual event. So, quite often I'll get someone that will come to me to be coached, and I'll actually reduce their weekly mileage to from what they've been doing previously, which comes as a bit of a surprise to them. But a lot of people overtrain, whether it's for a half marathon or for a 100-mile race. They A lot of people do too much, and what happens is they'll be standing on that start line. Take London Marathon for example. There's everyone standing on that start line, and a massive percentage of people, um, they might think they've trained brilliantly because they've been doing loads of miles every week. But what happens is they're standing on that start line, they feel amazing, but they've actually completely exhausted themselves. They're totally run down because they've trained too
Mm.
much, and they might only discover this 18, 20 miles into the race. You hear people talking about the wall is a very common thing to talk about in marathon racing. And a lot of these guys, they've just trained too much. So you got to, and for each individual, it's different. So that's kind of where I earn my money as a coach in learning all about my clients and their, because you've got to take into account all the different situations as well. So, for example, someone who doesn't work and doesn't have any kids, they might be able to train a bit harder than someone that works 10 hours on a building site every day and has 5 kids at home.
Yeah.
Um, because that second person is going to be knackered anyway. So there's all these things to take into consideration, and that's kind of where I earn my money as a coach. Because those two extreme examples, you've got the guy who doesn't have any kids and doesn't work very much, and the guy that has 5 kids and works 12 hours a day or whatever it might be. If they just Google marathon training plan and they both get the same plan, they're going to get a very different
Yeah, of
outcome.
course they are.
Um, so that's where it's very it's important to learn about the individual, and it can vary massively from person to
Of
person.
course. And with
Um,
that, with
but
sorry, go on.
I've got sorry to interrupt. I've got clients that know each other, um, and they kind of get a bit baffled sometimes as to why their plan. They might be training for the same race, but their plans are quite different. Um, and that can be quite baffling, I guess, until I explain the reason why.
Right, and I imagine it's especially baffling when they end up trying to compare regimes, and they probably try and inspire each other, and especially if they come across the same regime, it's got to be quite disheartening at times. But you
Yeah,
mentioned obviously you're overtraining and would especially not just from a training point of view, but I suppose from a mental strength point of view as well. I suppose that probably makes a lot of sense from a lifestyle perspective. How do you what do you do with regards to mental strength training? Because mate, I mean, I keep going for 5 or 6K, and then suddenly the proverbial wall kicks in, and I want to be back at home. I want it to be nice and warm.
yeah,
I want my
yeah,
protein shake. I want my fried eggs. I want
yeah,
my coffee.
yeah. So in kind of direct to give you a direct answer to your situation, just explain there. Part of the problem is you've convinced yourself that that's going to happen. So, and then you make it happen. So you're out for your 10K run or whatever it is. You almost before you've even stepped out the door, you know after 6 or 7K that you're going to want to be finished. Does that make
It does
sense?
indeed.
Because you've kind of talked yourself into it. So that's, I guess, the number one trick, and it's kind of easier said than done. It takes a lot of practice. Is not I kind of tell people not to dwell on distance. So to give an extreme example, if I'm doing a 100-mile run, 100-mile race, I will not look at the distance very much at all. So I will easily get to halfway and probably have looked at my watch once. Um, Obviously, I've got a good idea of what distance I'm at, but there's just no point like dwelling on the distance, um, because then all the demons start coming in, which aren't going to help. So um, I do a lot of pacing for people doing 100-mile races, and one strategy that I do, which works quite well, and it would work even if you're doing a 5K race, is I tell them not to dwell on the halfway point, because what often happens is you kind of get to halfway, and whether you're doing a 5K or a 5,000K race, um, you have that little kind of halfway celebration. Yeah, I'm halfway, um, which I urge people to not do that, because what happens then is you get a massive low afterwards, because once you're over that little celebratory period of getting halfway, you suddenly realize, shit, I've got to do the same distance again. And that's where the demons come in and you start to get tired. Um, so you almost talk yourself into being
No,
tired.
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So a little trick that I do with clients when I'm pacing them is right up to, so from call it 50 miles right up to maybe 80, 85 miles. If they ask me how far
Sorry,
have we
pal.
gone, I'll,
Yeah,
is it
just we
is it
got
working?
to. Yeah, you are now. But just I got to a little trick that and then all the gold was deleted.
So a little trick, if I've got a client who's doing a 100-mile race, um, is between halfway and 80, even 90 miles, if they ask me, if I'm pacing them and they ask me, how far have we gone? How far have we gone? I would just kind of be quite blasé about it and say, is it not
No, no,
working?
no, no. Sorry, I was just saying, be quite
It's working.
blasé,
Oh, yeah,
ignore
yeah,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll get to the punchline in a minute. And say, yeah, we're halfway, mate. We're halfway. Even if we're 80 miles in, oh, we're only halfway. Don't worry about it. Let's keep going, sort of thing. Because it kind of keeps that psychological demon away.
Hmm.
And then you suddenly get to 90 miles, and it's like, right, we've only got 10 miles to go. Come on, we can do this. And then it's like, oh shit, yeah, I can do this. So there's all these little tricks that you can do. They take practice, of course, and not everything works for everyone, but you can talk yourself into being tired.
And you have to go into it with the right expectations as well. I think one thing that I was looking at from a mental point of view was the not go in with too high expectations, because then you can quite easily, I think that might even lead to people overtraining at times as well, because I did read that obviously a huge amount of training comes down to the amount of recovery you give yourself, especially if you're training for an ultra, which is huge, obviously. But in regards to what I was looking on one of your trail talks, and you said that sometimes you recite a United squad in your head as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Amazing. We won't go into United now, although you are talking to a fellow United fan as well, which is always a good thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know.
Good,
I mean,
good.
who else would you support if you're from, London or Surrey?
Yeah, I know it's where all the United fans are
That's
down
it. I
here.
mean, I used to, I suppose you were growing up in the glory era rather, and when kids would come up to you, ish.
Yeah, just before I started supporting United, in just before it all kicked off, the glory years. So I was lucky I got
You
in.
got in.
Got in
Oh, you
early.
got in. All right. Well, I used to just say if kids would come up to me and say, well, now if anyone calls me a glory supporter, I'll be saying, well, I was just guaranteeing myself a happy childhood. Like, it's
Yeah,
a bit
yeah, yeah.
stupid. I
That's
mean,
good.
if I'm not going to support
Yeah,
anyone else, I mean, why would you not support the best team
exactly,
around? Constant dopamine hit. It's great.
exactly. Yeah.
And so you don't do anything outside of running, like, because obviously there's been links with meditation and spirituality and ultra running. I mean, is that something that's found its way into your life?
Not really. I know people that do, and get a lot out of that. Um, but it's not something that I've really gone into. I don't really know how you find the time for that sort of thing. But I guess, I don't do meditation in the traditional sense, but maybe I do, without even realizing it, just by doing other activities which I enjoy. Like I enjoy cooking, um, even just watching TV or watching football. Maybe you could argue that that's kind of almost like meditate. I'm sure people that meditate wouldn't argue that, but you're switching off. So ultimately, that sort of stuff is about switching off, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's whatever really works for
Well, I
you.
suppose it is, yeah. I mean, because I'm still quite early to the whole meditation scene. Mine
Yeah,
is simply very focused. I don't get too much caught up in the spirituality aspects of it, especially when you start talking about higher beings and other stuff, because obviously that kind of, I don't know. I'm relatively agnostic in that respect, so it's certainly not a direction I want to go. But I suppose from the point of view that just kind of clear your mind and you focus on one specific thing. I suppose that's definitely something you'd be doing while you're running, I mean, in particular, because you're focusing on just
yeah.
getting there, I guess. But it was also quite interesting because, doing my journalistic research, it was I found out the longest ultra trail run was the 3100 self-transcendental run in Queens, New York. I'm not sure if that's something you've ever
Okay. Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
engage
The
with.
round the block.
The round the block for 3,100
Yeah,
miles, and it's supposed to take place over 2 months, and you have 48 days to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. Sod that. Yeah, not for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Although this afternoon I've actually just announced that I'm going to run 30 miles, doing laps around my garden. So
you did.
it's not quite 2 months, but it's going to be pretty
I
horrendous
mean,
in the same sort of way.
how many laps is that? Because what I saw was that wasn't it 600 laps was supposed to be the length of the marathon.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a marathon. So being an ultra runner, I decided to add a bit more on. So I'm going to do on Saturday. I was going to say Saturday morning. It'll probably be Saturday all day long. I'm going to be doing 700 laps. I'm just looking out into the garden now. It's just kind of dawning on me. but yeah, I'm going to be doing 700 laps in my garden. So
Awesome, man. Well, good luck with that.
there's nothing else to do, is there,
There
at the
is
moment?
not. Have you got is it quite a broad garden, or is it long and narrow, a bit like mine? Because that would be a
No,
really shit lap
it's
for me to
quite
do.
yeah, it's quite round-ish. So yeah, it's not too bad. It's definitely a lap rather than a length.
And it's going to be flat ground as well, man. You're cheating yourself a little bit. Do you not want to incorporate the
Yeah,
stairs as well? You know, who is that
yeah,
that recent person who decided to hike the height of Everest on?
yeah. Rory, yeah, I know
Oh,
Rory.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's done all sorts of crazy stuff in his house. Um, but yeah, it's cool though because as endurance athletes, we're all stuck at home. Whether you're an endurance athlete or not, you're stuck at home. So it's just a bit of fun, isn't
Oh,
it?
of course.
So on on Saturday, I'm raising a bit of money for the NHS, which is obviously close to everyone's heart at the moment. So um, it's just going to be a bit of a laugh,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
it'll be horrendous as
Of
well. But
course.
yeah, like I say, I haven't got much else on at the moment.
And how long do you envisage that might take? It'd be, what was it? You said 30 miles around your garden. Um,
Yeah.
you're able to keep a relatively
So,
consistent pace, presumably, if it's rounded.
well, there's a few turns and stuff. Um, I mean, normally if I did that out on the trails it is flat, which is good, but on trails it take me about 4.5 hours, but I think it might be closer to 6 um, out here just because all the little turns and I don't know to be honest. I got no idea.
It'd be very
I'll just
entertaining.
keep going round. I'll keep going round and round and round until I get there. So, but yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Oh, well, best of luck with that, my man. I mean, that sounds absolutely
Yeah,
insane.
thanks.
Um, so obviously we've been speaking about ultra trail for an extended period of time. I wanted to get into you. No pressure.
Yep.
Obviously your background and how you got into ultra trail and ultra running in the first instance.
Yeah. So I used to work in the charity sector,
Mhm.
organising challenge events for charities. So, and I would look after all the marathon runners and things like that. So I was giving people advice on marathons, and I felt like a bit of a fraud because I'd never actually run one myself. So that's kind of I decided to run a marathon just to get the experience of what it was like, so that when I was talking to people, I knew a little bit more what I was talking about. So that's kind of was the first step, and then I quickly realized that running on the road wasn't really for me. And I mean, back then it was just 10 years ago, and ultras weren't very popular at that point. Are you still there? You look like you're breaking up a
No,
bit.
really?
Yes, you're still there. It's just the screen. Don't worry.
Okay.
As long as you can hear
I can
me,
hear you
I will
perfectly, mate.
continue.
Yeah.
Good. So, yeah, there weren't many ultras at that time, and I decided to create my own. So I ran across Scotland in 5 days, 30 miles a day, staying in bed and breakfast and things like that. And that's kind of where it all started. And then I started doing races, and I always had this dream of doing the Marathon des Sables,
Sorry, mate.
the
Um,
race we spoke.
I got to you were doing 30 miles a day for 5 days across Scotland, staying in B&Bs. Then you cracked up.
Yeah. And then I started doing different races and things like that. And I always had this dream of doing Marathon des Sables, um, since seeing it on Trans World Sport as a kid. You remember Trans World Sport?
Too, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just got to a point where I thought, sod it, let's just give it a go.
Jesus. You
And that
wanted
was
to do
kind
the
of
Marathon
the
des Sables ever since you were a kid, seeing it on TV.
yeah, yeah. Just I remember
Jesus.
seeing it on Trans World Sport, and as I was waiting for the South American football to come on or whatever it was, and it just always stuck in my mind. I didn't even know what it was to be honest. And and yeah, eventually I just thought, let's do it.
Fair enough.
And then it all got a bit out of control after that.
Just cascaded.
Um, yeah, and it's just always trying to find like the next hardest thing, which is generally what we do as ultra runners, most of us.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And so that's how it kicked off, really. So just started out challenging yourself to do Marathon des Sables, but prior to that, obviously, encouraging people to do marathons, even though you hadn't done them yourselves. And then it just went out
Yeah,
of control from there. Bloody hell. And okay, so
and here we
yeah,
are.
and here you are, and here you are. And so how did that then lead you to start running adventures then?
So I kind of came up with the idea when I was in the desert, actually, doing the Marathon des Sables.
Well, the first time.
And it, yeah, so it kind of stemmed from the experience of training for MDS, as we call it. I came across a lot of coaches that were very like, I don't know, a bit elitist and like your cliche running coach, I guess. Tracksuit and I don't know. It just the I'm not going to name names, of course,
Obviously.
but I'm sure they're all brilliant coaches, but they didn't the way they were kind of conduct. Not all of them, but some of them were conducting themselves. It didn't really sit well with me. So I decided to, and a lot of people were starting to ask me for advice on training for things. So I decided to set up Run Adventures and start coaching people and doing guided runs as well, which I mean, guided runs are quite popular these days, but back then they weren't even really a thing. Um, and it was just a bit of a hobby business really. And but they just started growing as these things do. And but yeah, the coaching thing, I wanted to be myself and not try and act up like this elitist coach or anything like that. Just be real.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted from running adventures, and that's kind of what it's been ever since. You get what you get with me, and I'm honest and blunt with people, but in a hopefully a supportive way. And um, but yeah, it's you don't get any kind of. I wouldn't, if you were a client, I wouldn't just give you a load of scientific running jargon just to impress you. I say it how it is.
What kind of scientific running jargon would that entail exactly?
I mean, you could talk about kind of all these heart rate zones and training in different heart rate zones um, and all the different diets and things like that. And could talk about it all day long. But a lot of people don't want that. They just want to be told what to do or advised what to do. So that was kind of course I've like done all my studying and everything, and I know I can if people want that stuff, I can give it to them. But most people that come to me, they just want to be told, what do I have to do tomorrow? How far do I have to run? What do I need to be doing? What shoes do I need to buy and stuff like that? So it's
Yeah.
we keep it as simple as
Oh, that's
possible.
good.
Try not to
Well,
overcomplicate
you
it.
don't want to, yeah. I mean, a lot of the time you do encounter coaches that do the whole extra or over motivation. Sometimes like, I used to play quite a bit of competitive tennis when I was younger, so up until about 16,
Yeah,
17. And I had a variety of different coaches. And the best ones that I had were the ones that were slightly technical but didn't put too much pressure on you. Whereas I had others in the
yeah,
past that would be over pushy, over motivating, some who just made too many jokes. I mean, I'm trying to
yeah,
take
yeah.
this seriously, bro. And then crack a few wisecracks, and you'd be sitting there thinking, well, can I play tennis now? So no, it's good that you have that kind of approach. Otherwise, people do tend to lose a bit of interest or tend to look elsewhere. So
Yeah.
as um, as you started doing the guided tours, where was the first ever guided tour that you did?
So just in my local trails, North Downs Way.
Hmm.
I started doing it here, and obviously I still do, not at the moment, but generally I still do a lot of runs around this area. But now we go all around the UK, and even I do a lot of trail weekends. So we go to places like Portugal and Mallorca and Madeira, um, go for a weekend and have a lot of fun. And again, it's not like a training camp. It's we go and have fun on the trails. The main thing is to have fun and to socialize with like-minded people. Um, so we'll go out running for a few hours, and then in the afternoon we might go to the beach, or um, depending on where we are, we'll depend what we do. But in Portugal, for example, we'll go to the beach, and then we'll go to the square, and we'll have a few beers and have some amazing food and stuff like that. So it's um, it's all about, again, having lots of fun and meeting new people and socializing with new people, and um, but with a lot of trail running thrown in. And when we're on the runs, we stop a lot. So the one that sticks in my mind fairly recently, I do a trip in Mallorca every year, every week. I was going to say then that would be good. Every year, um, and we kind of ran up this mountain, hour and a half up or whatever it was. But then we just sat at the top for about 45 minutes, just chilled out. So it's not about times and things like that. It's just about enjoying the trails. And then we just sat there watching the eagles and the vultures fly around below us, and that for me is what it's all about. It was just, enjoying each other's company and having fun.
Yeah, I've seen some of the photos on the Instagram. They look absolutely spectacular. So it's definitely what drew me into wanting to speak to you in the first place.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
but just going into the more specifics of the business as well, the name
yeah,
running adventures. Obviously, it does
mm,
what it says on the tin. It's very simple and it cuts through all the crap.
yeah.
Did you ever think that you were going to call it something different? Did you have any other ideas that came to mind?
I don't think I did,
Good.
and I can't. I, I don't even know where I came up with the name from. um, but I think there was a local punk band in my area at the time, which was, I can't even remember what they were called, but it was something adventures, and I thought, oh, I stick running on the front of that, and it works quite well. So I'm I do wonder if I think that's where it came from, but yeah, but then obviously when you come up with a name, you think, oh yeah, that's cool, but then if you're sensible, you then sit down and think about kind of how will it work with marketing and going forward. And for me, it worked perfectly because, as we spoke about before, I do a lot of things under that kind of running adventures brand, but everything kind of sits under it quite nicely. Um, Whereas I kind of, I think I couldn't tell you what the other names were, but they were kind of a lot more specific, maybe towards guided trail runs or coaching or whatever it was. Which then, of course, all the other bits and bobs wouldn't have made much sense. Um, so when I did come up with a name, I do remember sitting down and kind of writing it down, and then thinking, okay, will this cover everything that I want to potentially do going forwards? Which it has done, and I think that was important to do.
Sorry, Paul. We're just going to have to go back again. You were just saying you were writing down you're writing down running adventures, and you're just trying to figure out whether it was going to encompass everything you wanted to do. Then you cut out.
Yeah, yeah. So basically that. So I think it's really important to do that when you're coming up with a brand. Because the fun bit is coming up with a name, and it would be very easy to, you think, oh, that's cool, and just to run with it. Well, that was not intended to have fun.
Should have said a thing,
But
mate.
of
You should
course,
have
you've
said a
got to.
thing and just let it run.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was. I felt it was important that I sat down and kind of thought about, okay, this is a cool name that I like, but will it actually work for everything that I want to do going forward? Will all these little aspects work under that brand? And even I was thinking about things that I had no intention of doing in the first few years, but maybe going further ahead, things that I might do, like the trail weekends. I didn't do them to begin with, but it was always kind of something that I thought maybe could happen in the future. So yeah, it was kind of a process of sitting down and making sure that all worked.
Okay. So it's essentially like, irrespective of where you are in your journey, I mean, if you're a startup, essentially, if you're quite early on and you've got a vision for your brand, you really do need to think about all the little things you want to do with it and make sure that you do have a name that can encompass it. Admittedly, you can go through a rebranding process later down the line, but essentially that would end up losing a lot of customers, I think, a lot of brand
Mm.
visibility as well. You've ended up over the last 6 years to build, I imagine, quite a relatively strong brand where within the
Yeah.
ultra running community. So that's obviously done you a world of wonders. But with regards to the customers that you ended up getting in the first place, obviously your clients, you've got a combination of coaching clients as well as obviously
Yep.
customers that come on the guided tours with you, amongst a few other bits as well. Which area of the business did you start off in, and was it coaching?
It was the guided runs.
Okay,
The coaching was the coaching happened at the same time, but in a bit more of an informal manner.
okay.
Um, the guided runs were the first kind of money making
And how
exercise,
did
so
you
to
go
speak.
about getting your first clients for those?
So I did. I'd already done like a couple just for free, like using Twitter or whatever, just to basically get groups of people together and do a run. Um, this was before I even had the idea for running adventures, but I guess that played a part in me sort of going for it. And and yeah, it's just Twitter, social media, um, and I can't. Doesn't make for a very good story, but I can't even remember the first actual official Run Adventures run. I think we had like 3 people or something. Um, but I was just happy that someone turned up, and I couldn't believe it that someone was actually paying me money to lead them. So I was buzzing.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's so that was kind of the beginning.
Well, you
Yeah.
must have done so bloody many since then, man. I mean, it would be a hard task to remember all of them, but to even get a few just organically through Twitter. Have you found that Twitter's been your strongest suit so far? Because obviously you're quite active on Instagram as well.
Yeah, I barely use Twitter
Oh,
now.
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It's
I
interesting.
got a bit bored of it.
They both
So,
have different
but
approaches,
funnily
don't
enough,
they?
yeah, funnily enough, I was looking at it a couple of days ago, and I've got quite a lot of followers on there. I didn't even
Oh, really?
realize. So, so I'm thinking I might have to revisit it. But yeah, I mostly use Facebook and Instagram, and I do have quite a passionate, loyal sort of small group of people who will come to a lot of stuff that I do. Um, and of course, it's word of mouth is the best marketing you can get. So they'll tell, if each one of them tells a couple of mates and then they come along and then they tell a couple of mates, then it's just natural growth. Um, so yeah, I'll always get some regulars at every event I do. There'll be some familiar faces, and then a whole bunch of new people as well. And some people just come once and you never see them again, and other people then become that regular familiar face. So, um, but yeah, but it's also trying to build up a bit of a community about it as well. And like I said before, it's just having fun um, and people get to know each other. And I've had people that have come on my trail weekends, for example, and now there's a WhatsApp group on the Portugal one that we did, and they're still that was 5 6 months ago, and they're still chatting every day. They're kind of best mates now, so that's really nice to see, and but of course helps with the business as well. And I have a lot of loyal people who will, if I post something on Instagram, they'll just repost it to all their followers as well, which is amazing. So
Well, positive experiences are important, mate. Hence, word of mouth, of course. And I was kind of getting
Yeah,
that
yeah,
feel for the community on that trail talk where you were doing a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. I can't remember when it was, but you had about 8 people on
mm,
there. And then as soon as you unmuted them all, they were like, "Oh, hi, Betty. Hi, Jodie." And
yeah,
it's just like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And that's the kind of
yeah, yeah,
kind of community spirit you bring to it, which is great. And I,
yeah.
I suppose there's a lot to be said for the leadership qualities you've got to possess whilst you're taking some of these people, some of your clients on guided tours. Like, how do you find it? I mean,
Yeah.
do you find it quite pressurizing at times?
Um, so I'm generally quite a chilled out, calm person.
Mhm.
Um, my wife wouldn't say that, but yeah, other people tell me that. So I think that helps. You know, I've done over the years, even before running, as I said, I did a lot of trekking and cycling trips with charity trips, and I've seen it all. Right, you know, bad things have happened on trips, which I won't get into, but you learn to deal with situations, um, and I think that helps. And then it's learning how to deal with different personalities as well. So um, it's there is a bit of an art to it, but I don't. In answer to your question, I generally don't find it stressful. Um, it's just what I do, and I often get people say to me, "I don't know how you kind of kept those 20 people together for 2 hours or whatever it might have been." Um, but you just have all the little tricks um, to kind of make sure the fastest person's enjoying themselves and the slowest person's enjoying themselves.
And
Um,
then everyone in
so
between.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So um, yeah, I've got a lot of tricks up my sleeve to keep people happy on the
Well,
trails.
don't share them with me here, mate, in case any of your guests or clients are watching. It would be worth them knowing your little secret.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah, yeah.
magician, you don't, a magician doesn't tell us how he does the trick, does he?
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
and just in terms of how I know we're probably running out of time a little bit here, but just to close up, you mentioned that obviously your first guided tour you only had 2 or 3 people on. You can't specifically remember it, but what was your process around organizing it in the first instance? Had you ever organized something like that before?
Yeah, so again, going back to the kind of the day job, which was still the day job then, um, I was organizing these events. So I've been organizing events for a long time,
Right.
15 years or something now, active events, um, and also, you know, black tie dinners and everything in between. So um, I, there's a lot of skills which are transferable. So you got things like, as we've just spoken about, like keeping the groups happy and keeping people happy and motivating people. Obviously, with running, people get tired, so it's learning how to keep people moving as well. Maybe when they're struggling a little bit, but there's also the other skills like speaking in front of a group and um, you know, addressing people and all the behind the scenes stuff like the risk assessments and emergency plans and all that kind of more boring but essential stuff as well. So I think those skills that I learned in that other job were really, really useful, and I wouldn't be able to do this without
Yeah, it
them.
always helps, doesn't it? Have those kind of
Yeah,
transferable skills. I mean, it's useful. I mean, especially when starting a new business. Um, and
yeah.
so, just with regards to the social media aspect, do you do paid ads? Is that something that you've learned to do yourself?
So everything that I do with the business, I do myself. Um, yeah, I have done paid advertising. I do on Facebook and Instagram. Um, but yeah, I do the whole lot. So you know, manage all the social media channels, the website, obviously the runs and all the actual events. Um, but yeah, everything you see at Running Adventures is done by me, basically.
Fair enough.
And a lot of it is self-taught or Googled.
Yeah. Has to be. It's like Facebook ads. I think I can't
Yeah,
remember the name of the chap I learned it from initially, but I watched like this 3 hour YouTube video on it. And it didn't even teach me everything. I still had to buy a couple of books as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
What's your
Even just like Google SEO and stuff like that, which is obviously really important. That was all self-taught, and funnily enough, I had a client the other day who was on a run, and she said, I always kind of ask her, why did you decide to come, or where did you see it, and stuff like that. And she said, well, basically, I was Googling about trail running, and everything that I put in, your bloody company came up. So I gave up in the end and decided to come on a run. And I was like, that is music to my ears.
Thank God, all of that
She
time poring over Google SEO documentation has been worth it.
Exactly. So yeah, that was a nice little thing to hear from that
Yeah,
lady.
fantastic. Have you done anything on AdWords or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, do all that as well.
Oh, it's a ball ache, isn't
Drives
it?
me nuts because once you've just worked it out, they change the whole platform and you have to kind of relearn it. But um, yeah, I like I said, I do all of it. But yeah, I don't enjoy it all, to be
Well,
honest.
no plans to potentially take on someone else to offload the stuff you don't want to do too?
No, I have thought about it, and I kind of say that I do everything myself. I do obviously chat to friends and stuff who give me advice on these things. Um, but the whole kind of in my past life, I used to manage people, and I enjoyed doing that, but it's not something that I want to get back into doing. And at the moment, without going into too much detail, I make enough money to live quite happily, which I think is important. I probably could earn a lot more money doing other things, but I love what I do, and I've got enough money to live quite comfortably. So um, I can't be bothered with the stress of taking on more, staff and things like that. So um, yeah, quite happy where things
No,
are.
fair enough. And so I suppose in terms of your vision for running adventures, I know you pretty much just told me. I mean,
Yeah,
do you envisage taking on any more services or anything else to offer people?
there's nothing in the plan at the moment. Always the kind of plan for the last few years has always been to fill events up quicker, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So if I launch a trail weekend, for example, for it to fill up, within a few days, that's the dream. Um, rather than having to kind of keep slogging away at finding the people to come on the weekend. And thankfully, touch wood, just before this virus appeared, that was starting to happen. So when I launched a weekend, they would fill up pretty much
That's
instantly,
awesome.
um, which just means that I can go and go running myself and go and enjoy myself and spend time with the kids and do what I want, and work less basically, which is
I think it's everyone's dream, mate.
it doesn't sound yeah, I mean it doesn't sound very ambitious from a business point of view, but that's basically what I want. I want things to fill up quickly, so I don't have to work as
Well,
much.
I think that's
Um,
entirely what everyone
so
envisages for a successful business. It's self-sufficiency,
yeah,
passive income, all of that. I mean, you're absolutely living it right
yeah,
now. Um, so yeah, that's awesome. I think there's before I wrap up, Matt, I need you to do
yeah.
two things for me. Now I'm
Go on.
now as I've just kicked this off, I'm collating a little booklet of every guest, because every guest is running essentially a startup or a business about 6 years in, close enough. But I'm asking them all to pitch their business, like do an elevator pitch for like 10, 15 seconds. Would you mind
Okay.
terribly?
No, I'll give it a go.
Thank you very much. So when you're ready.
Okay, so running adventure. Oh, that was an awful start, wasn't it?
Now,
I'm going to start that
five, four,
again.
three, two, one,
I
you
can't
go.
even say my own name. Right, start again. Um, running adventures. We cover everything trail running related, and with a little bit of road thrown in as well. So we do coaching, guided trail runs, talks, trail weekends, and lots of other things, with the main emphasis being on having a good laugh, having a lot of fun, meeting new people, and just enjoying life out on the trails.
That was great. I love that.
How was
It was
that?
perfect. It was perfect. It's perfect. Don't worry, I'll cut out the first bit for you as well. We won't ever see that
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
except for when someone watches this long form interview.
Yeah, that's fine.
And last but not least, mate, can you do me a favor? Seeing as you're fortunately not on Instagram, could you turn around and do a selfie with me in the background?
Oh yeah, okay. Let's give that a go.
It will look terrible. It
Let's
will look terrible for me, but it'll be fine.
it might be all right. Let's see. Right. Let me see. Hang on, bring it a bit closer. Oh, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you,
Worked.
mate. That's so kind of you. Mate, thank you so
Yeah.
much for jumping on. Really appreciate it. My
Thank you.
second ever episode, so it's very kind of you to do so. For anyone that
Pleasure.
wants to check out Matt's page, it's running_Bucky on Instagram or running ADV on Instagram. Otherwise, it's runningadventures.com. Is that right?
.uk.
.co.uk. That's a terrible faux pas. I do apologise. But I want to thank Matt again for coming on board. Really appreciate it, mate. And look forward to
Pleasure.
catching up with you again at some point.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers, pal.